Consortium Outreach Committee. We are, of course, go through our usual preambles, community focused on protection of data and use. Everyone's welcome. Everyone has an opportunity to contribute. So please feel free to jump in and participate. Antitrust policy applies under the Linux Foundation, where we have competitors working together on areas of common interest. Antitrust is always a thing. So make sure that you're familiar with the antitrust policy. Any new folks, first timers outside of our IDC colleagues? I don't say, everybody looks familiar from previous ones. So I think we're good there. All right, the team, of course, listed on the staff slide. Reach out to us if anybody needs help or has questions. Directory of the team. Do we have quorum, Ria? Don't think we do.
No, we definitely don't. Last I checked, I think we've got 2 people. 3, no, sorry, wrong one. Let me check.
Okay.
No, 2 or 3, don't have quorum, but we've got nothing to vote on, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, so the minutes from last meeting, I wasn't here, but I heard it was fantastic. So any objections to approving the minutes? All right, if none, we'll consider that resolved. The minutes are approved. Usual reminders, the jobs board, if anybody is hiring, if anybody is seeking to be hired, please look at the jobs board, take advantage of that resource. The newsletter, we are always hungry for content. If you've got news, new announcements, products, folks spoke at a conference and that conference is now available online, jump it in, get into the newsletter. We are always excited to have content. And blogs, use cases, solutions, technical info. Everybody loves those kind of blogs. So if you have a blog to submit, please use the content form and get that on board. All right, the AI Infrastructure Summit. We are deep in execution on this. So I don't have any, basically, we've created the machine that we have created. That machine is going to do what it's going to do. So I don't really have any update at this point unless anyone needs help. If not, we're just, we're going to keep rolling. I think the show opens
Tuesday,
next
I believe.
Tuesday, yeah. All right, if anyone needs help, please shout out. All right, the next topic is the workshop, October 20th at the Canopy Hotel. By the way, I found out there's 2 canopies in San Francisco. This is the Canopy south of Market, or the SoMa one. So, that's where we're going to be hosting our workshop. I think Laura and Guzo, who I know Laura is not going to be here. Guzo said he's going to be late. I think they gave you guys a brief last week on the current plan. Sorry, was there a chat?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just wondering, I signed up for a couple booth slots on the for the AI Infra Summit, but I never heard back, so I wasn't sure if they got filled up or maybe I missed the email.
I don't think we were doing confirmation.
Sasha, you are in. You're in there. You're on the list. Sorry, I didn't realize we hadn't got back to you. So yeah, you're
okay.
definitely
Maybe
down
I should just check my spam list or spam.
I'm not sure.
inbox.
I'm not sure we emailed back. I think the assumption was that if people were down, it was going to be okay. So I apologize.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, and thanks for volunteering to stand the post for some time. I appreciate that.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, typo.
Can I just actually ask Renew if you could check the latest, if there have been any updates to the sign up sheet and add that to the list, if you could, please. Thank you.
Okay.
'Cause I think there are some new ones. Sorry.
Invitation. So October 20th is our workshop. We have space for about 30 people. It's going to be, 30, between 30 and 35 is what we can say. 35, they say the room is pretty tight. 30, it's relatively comfortable. We have the registration website up now. It is located here. The links to it are in the invitations. Customer invitations can start going out today. Who to invite? All members are able to invite. This is a resource that's being provided by the CCC. So all members are available to invite their customers. It is a one-day seminar from like 10 to 4 in San Francisco. So if you have likely confidential computing customers, end users in San Francisco or the Bay Area that could come up for the day, those would be your primary targets for invitations. We have 2 types of invitations. We are going to have those of folks that, hey, I just want you to come and listen and learn, because that's going to help you become excited about confidential computing and learn how this could benefit your organization. But also those that are maybe already adopters and might be interested in talking about their use case and how that they have deployed it and are using it as a way to generate excitement and interest in others. So we have both a attendee invitation and a potential speaker invitation. Those will be on the next couple of slides. So the invitations, like I said, are we've already written up the invitations. Use that text. You can customize it a bit, if depending on who you're talking about, but careful about don't changing the facts in it. And the other thing to be clear is setting the right expectations. We don't actually know whether we have a problem yet with space. So if we have space for say 33 and we get 20 people signed up, we don't have a problem. If we have space for 33 and we get 60 signed up, we got a problem. So right now, registering right now does not confirm a seat. We're going to be sending out confirmation emails on September 18th to those that are going to get a seat, a speaking slot and a seat. Will get a confirmation email on or about September 18th. So don't say reserve. It's like, for example, don't change the text to say reserve your seat today. You change. That's we're being very careful with the language that this is your apply to attend, and we will confirm on September 18th. Okay. Text of the invitations are here. I think probably the best way for me to do this will be I'll email this out to the outreach mailing list. So it'll be easier to cut and paste than trying to find it on the minutes and find it on a PowerPoint slide. Just take a note here, email. Okay. It has the details of what we're trying to do. This is an attendee. This is somebody that you just want to come and listen and learn. And then there's a speaker invitation email as well, where you're saying, hey, if you're a customer that say, I'm going to company X, hey, we've got this customer that's down in Sunnyvale, and they've done this really cool thing with confidential computing. We would love them to attend this and tell others about it. This would be the invitation that you would send to them. Okay. Any questions on the next step? So it is, I am declaring it, it is, the season is now open for inviting your customers to our workshop. I would really like to have that problem of we have more applicants than we have seats, because I'd really like the room to be full and a lot of energy and a lot of excitement come October 20th. All right, any questions? All right, if not, we are going to go on to our next topic, which is going to our guests from IDC. So guys recall, back in the spring, we commissioned a new research project, and we were focusing on gauging survey reactions to different use case scenarios, value propositions that confidential computing could provide. And we turned that mission over to IDC to go have them survey kind of a multinational array of customers and potential buyers and find out what use cases and value propositions were resonating. And today is our first look at the survey results. So Meg, are you taking it from here?
I am, and I will share my screen if that's okay.
You bet.
Unless you want to put up slides.
I will take it down. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's see if I can share the right screen here. Perfect. So this is sort of an interim update. We're happy to be here reporting on results. Thanks for having us on. And we have now completed the survey and done some analysis, and we want to share some of that preliminary analysis and talk about what's going to go into the white paper for publication. So you'll see on the slides here, this says prelim findings, not for distribution. So we're just sort of sharing this as an interim view. It's going to be the end white paper that can be published and quoted and all of that. So this is just for internal processing and not to be shared at this point. So our goal today is to update you and then get approval on what we see as an outline for that white paper that we'll be writing going forward. In terms of time, Mike, do we have, is this sort of the remainder of the hour, or how do you want to handle sort of going through this? And do you want people to ask questions as we go, or wait for us to finish and then ask questions?
We have no other topics. We always kind of save the last couple minutes for any other business. So why don't we go to like 55 past the hour? And I think it's we're a free for all. Let's questions as we go.
Great. Okay. So the survey was 600 responses, and we have a good spread across 7 different countries, and mostly large enterprises, and a good spread across industry with more of a focus on financial services, government, and healthcare. The screeners, we really made sure that we were talking to the people that are involved in elements that would be where confidential computing would be necessary. So that we want them to be knowledgeable and really hands-on in terms of managing things or setting policy. Fairly senior folks and a number of different sort of roles across the organization. So I'm going to hand off to Phil for an overview of the key survey findings before we get into what we suggest for the white paper. You're on mute, Phil.
All right. Hopefully that's better. Thanks,
Yep.
Meg. And thank you to the Confidential Computing Consortium for having us on to report on these findings. We were very, very pleased with the data and the outlook for confidential computing. And as Meg had mentioned, and Mike, any questions, feel free. We will address what we can today, and anything that we can't answer, of course, will be followed up on. I think another key question that was asked of these respondents is, are you involved in specifying or developing technology systems to process the confidential or regulated data in their area? 100% yes. Okay, so I think the data that we have here is a very high quality, and we thought that we'd begin with a SWOT. And I really like the idea of a SWOT because confidential computing is not just a technology, but it is a movement. It is a framework that the Confidential Computing Consortium is driving to generate education and awareness. And that was one of the prime goals of this study, and that will be reflected in the white paper, along with other data that you see here today. All of this is just meant to reflect our initial findings, and we have developed a white paper outline. I would call it a very full white paper outline draft that we would also like for you to consider. So as we begin with the SWOT, we found that 74% of respondents are familiar with confidential computing, showing growing awareness. We did use the definition which was provided by the consortium, and so we know that this data is solid. Another key finding in a strength was CC is preferred over complex alternatives like fully homomorphic encryption and zero knowledge proofs for performance and compliance. 55% are prioritizing securing workloads from external threats. So organizations are really focused on immediate security needs at this moment as they're thinking about confidential computing. And then, of course, we did see broad industry support for confidential computing data integrity benefits, which ranked very highly.
Philip,
yeah.
May I ask a quick question? So 55 is pretty high, but there's 45% using it for other things. So do we have a breakdown of that we could look at some point as we go through?
I'm not sure if that slide was included here in the deck.
I'll pull it up behind the scenes, and
thank you. That's fine. Not urgent, but I think it's I'd say 55 is big, but I'm interested to see if there are other if there are two any other big ones as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Other big ones would be what you might expect around maintaining privacy of workloads from public cloud providers, compliance with relevant data privacy regulations, assurance of integrity of digital supply chains. So we do have that additional data. And
nice. That's fine. That's fine. That's enough detail for now. That's great. Thank you. Brilliant.
Okay, sure. As we get into the weaknesses, there was this low recognition of programmability, chain of trust, and recoverability benefits. I found this to be really interesting, actually, because IDC has noted that technical complexity of implementing, cryptographic enforcement and attestation can hinder their perceived relevance among organizations unfamiliar with sort of these advanced security protocols. So again, while it's a weakness, it presents a really unique opportunity to really focus in on what matters. We also had on-premise confidential computing seen as being very costly. It's very resource intensive. I think that as well in prior IDC research, we've noted there's some struggle with sizing and configuring and integrating GPU-based systems, really for AI, but this is also another opportunity, an area of focus. And then we also had data sharing, which remains cautious. Unlocking sensitive data sets is a low priority. And I think that we saw this as a reflection of privacy concerns, regulatory concerns, and technical challenges. And you're going to hear these themes sort of repeated as we go through some of the additional slides, which do break down some of the data a little bit more. But, we also show that confidential computing almost provides this pathway to overcome these barriers. And we do provide some best practices toward the end of this presentation, which help to overcome some of the challenges that we see facing confidential computing. In terms of opportunities, 67% of respondents saw their level of security for sensitive data as being on par with peers. That's a very interesting stat for me. There is some additional detail on that slide. We'll make sure to provide that as well. But this drives competitive interest, which drives adoption. So this is looking very good, I think, for organizations to become more proactive in their security and to have even more organizations looking at adoption. We had regulations like DORA positively influencing adoption. The numbers were quite high there. I think it was 77% are more likely to move towards confidential computing because of DORA. And we see cloud deployment driven by speed to market and existing provider relationships. So some of the big reasons why organizations were going with public cloud providers had to do with existing relationships. And again, that was in the high 70th percentile. I just
wanted to note that Mike has a question.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. So Phil, as I kind of take in the sweep of these findings, I guess what the picture that comes to my head is that the respondents are thinking about confidential computing as another layer of armor, particularly layers of armor in cloud deployed workloads. It's not, what I'm not seeing, particularly in some of these weakness and threat areas, is this is an enabler of new capabilities. They're like, hey, because we now have this confidential computing, we can now do this new thing. It seems to be like, we're going to continue to do what we're going to do. We're just going to put additional layers of protection around it. Do you think that's fair, or am I over characterizing?
No, I think it's a really interesting assessment, because as I was more or less diving deep into the data, you start thinking about, well, okay, how does the shared responsibility model differ in confidential computing as opposed to, say, cloud security, right? Which is what a lot of these organizations are more used to. And so I do think that might be a level deeper than where organizations are at this moment, where they're looking at more immediate security needs. So, for instance, I have a paper coming out real soon where it just talks about security for custom Gen AI applications. And I do think about confidential computing as being a part of that minimum viable security stack, okay? So there is this growing recognition, as you rightly point out, but I think that it's a little bit past seeing this as a niche technology and about it being an enabler, but I think that we're just really starting to see some of that take shape.
Got it. All right, thanks.
And sure, perhaps that's something that we could pull out in the white paper, is to say, hey, people are currently using this just to strengthen what they're already doing, but it could also be an enabler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that might be helpful. Yeah, okay. This is really good. This is really interesting. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I guess tangentially to that, the other area that really didn't surface was some of the additional challenges like side channel attacks and other things that can plague confidential computing in terms of organizations being aware. So I think that there's this awareness challenge that we're facing, both on it being an enabler and the challenges, and maybe some of the other programs through the Linux Foundation that sort of help to tackle these challenges for confidential computing. So I think it's a double-edged sword there in terms of that. But as we get into threats, we see that 84% face challenges with attestation. Oops. Of course, we're seeing these expertise gaps. This theme is coming up over and over again in terms of lack of internal skills and training. We do have this vendor lock-in, which could hinder adoption. And then there's a really interesting stat here that I did pull some additional information on, where security leadership is reactive, not strategic, when it comes to making these decisions around confidential computing. And the overall sentiment was that security leadership really isn't involved early, or it sort of lacks this influence in these kinds of top tier decisions. And so, of course, IDC research has shown over time that, the earlier security leadership is involved in the planning, it leads to better governance and fewer breaches and all of these good things. So I really did think that that was interesting. And again, that slide has additional detail in terms of other areas.
Again, this gives us, some pointers in terms of which personas we need to be hitting with information, right? And that's very useful, because it's always difficult to know the right people to hit, and this is a clear pointer, it seems to me.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Meg, I think we can jump to the next slide. So in terms of the outline draft that we provided, it was broken down into several sections, and so you can think of it as we sort of start off with this evolution of data security or data privacy. And as I was looking again at the title this morning, I was almost thinking another working title could be Locking the Future of Data Security as we think about confidential computing. But it goes into market awareness and adoption, deployment environments. We look at public cloud, private cloud. We talk about the benefits and challenges, the regulatory impacts, really drawing all of this emphasis from the data from the survey as that being a great jumping off point. And then we provide additional IDC insights as we go through it. Security and privacy priorities, the technology landscape, and then recommendations for organizations, those best practices. All right, Meg?
So now we're going to jump into lots of detail.
Can I just a couple of things on this slide, if I may?
Sure.
I mean, another possible one would be something like securing the future of data. So putting security as the front verb, I guess. And when we see we've got benefits, challenges, there's not so much an opportunities there, right? I mean, recommendations isn't quite the same. And if we want to be pulling out some of the things that we're looking forward to happening, as we kind of discussed in the last slide, that people haven't got their heads around yet, maybe having an opportunities section would be helpful too. What do people think?
If you're asking me, absolutely. And that can also be tied into, we can talk through that with the regulatory landscape. We can talk through that through the priorities section, because there are a tremendous number of opportunities available here. And we can see, again, we sort of have this growing momentum of adoption, that it would be very wise for organizations to start, including this. We see from our data that we have a very high percentage that are piloting confidential computing. You'll see that on a slide that's coming up. So between what's currently in use or piloting, I mean, we're over 70%, which is really, really interesting to me. So I think that we're sort of recognizing this bubble maybe early. And I think over the next 24 months, we're going to see a steady increase in this interest and deployment of confidential computing.
So, anyone else have any thoughts about that suggestion I just made? I'm happy to be overruled. It's just feel like an opportunity.
So, Mike, can you repeat that? So I apologize.
Yeah. So I was saying that having an opportunity section. Given that we know that the people haven't got their heads around some of the future-looking stuff.
I see. Okay, yeah.
And and Philip very helpfully, I like tied in things like the regulatory impact and how some of those things would fit.
Yeah, and I think there's Ab, I realize I'm stomping on you. Sorry.
No, go
the-
ahead, go ahead.
I would say there's a couple different ways that you are possibly framing, which is whether you want to call it the reactive and the proactive, the offensive and the defensive, that there's different ways of framing the use of confidential computing. Defensive is like, hey, I am, this is another layer of armor that I can put around my workloads to keep, bad actors out. And a lot of people look at it that way and then they stop. And then there's others that's like, with this capability, I could do this new thing. Or this thing, for example, the data collaboration use cases that I was a little disappointed to see back there on the SWOT was, low awareness, low interest. But it is one of those things that it's like, if I had this, I could do these things. And might be an interesting way to frame up at least part of the white paper, that opportunity section. And go ahead. I'm sorry, I jumped in.
No, I agree both with you and Mike. Definitely a more proactive approach. Like not only is like, okay, this is protected, but also these are the things that will be able to unlock the value of things. So I think that's one thing. The point actually was about, or maybe more of a question to Philip, is there a one thing sometimes I get feedback through like conversations and the ecosystem, customer and so on, is kind of how we interchangeably use the word security, privacy, data protection, just kind of like and I'm not sure like how we fit it necessarily in the white paper, but do you see any issues there, or like these kind of mixing things? Because data can be secure, right, by like in the system, but it might not be compliant with or like with privacy, right? So it is something that showing like what the confidential computing is actually obviously the security element, but also the privacy or confidentiality. Is it relevant even? Like, sorry, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but just wanted to get any.
It's a wonderful question. Internally, we have had a lot of discussions, and this is going back to 2.5 years around. Are we really talking about data security, or are we talking about data privacy? And I think we're at a point now where it's so important for compliance to be driving a lot of this adoption that you have a dichotomy, and you really have both. Like you had mentioned, you have the security and you have the privacy. And I think we'll be speaking to both of those streams in this paper.
So there's something else that that's really started bubbling up over the last 3 or 4 months, particularly in the EU, which is data sovereignty, which is different again, but plays in. And I know that we didn't ask you to look at that specifically, I don't think, in this, because it's kind of a new thing that's turning up and becoming quite a big talking point that I'm hearing really all over the place. Not just the EU, actually, but US and Asia Pac too. So I agree that that's this intersection is a really interesting one.
Yeah, and I think that there is some distinction to be made between data sovereignty and possibly the on-premise confidential computing. And so I have been thinking about that as well. And I think the reality, and I think it's in one of the upcoming slides, the reality for most organizations is that they are hybrid cloud, right? So you're going to have public and you're going to have private. And can you manage some things confidential wise that are on-prem from the public cloud? And, how are we seeing these maturations move forward? It is something that we can address in the paper. It wasn't something that I was going to have a big focus on.
Yeah, I don't want to go overboard on these things. We need a really clear paper with some really clear takeaways.
Right.
And this sort of feedback for us allows us to look at it strategically. But I think we need to. I don't want to overburden this paper. I mean, again, I'm very happy to be corrected if people feel this is really important points we need to bring out. But my feeling is let's have a really clear thing with some really clear takeaways rather than trying to get into the weeds too much at this stage.
No, I agree with that. Like, I mean, on this, there are things obviously that are bubbling, but they're not necessarily at this moment in time to the point to have like I don't know, like a whole dedicated section or something. But the dichotomy, as you mentioned, Philip, about the differentiate between security and which obviously both are needed, and privacy. But I think because I find that sometimes people, as I said, whether in the ecosystem or customers, they use interchangeably and things get a little bit confused at times. So I think having kind of clarity in the white paper will help, kind of people, whoever is reading this, especially if it's a, C-level type of, executive, or if we push that to them. So I think it'll be very helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, as the earlier data showed, we want this to be a priority for security leadership or for leadership. We want the board level, who is increasingly getting involved in making technology funding decisions, even at that board level, to also have an awareness and appreciation for here are the different benefits that confidential computing can provide, and here's the delineation between net security and privacy. So great points.
Sorry, just to my 2 cents. Trying to finish some thoughts off here. I think when we say data can be secure, what we generally mean there is data can be confidential, and both privacy and confidentiality are properties that security can bring, and they overlap. And one is a kind of the next layer on. Privacy is a thing you apply to something, and confidentiality is a way of doing it. And so when we say, I want my data secure, that really doesn't mean anything. Do you want integrity? Do you want confidentiality? Do you want availability? That's a classic CIA. So, just talking about security is in some ways a bit dangerous, but at the same time, if you don't bring that in, you're going to confuse people. So it's a tricky balance.
It's a great delineation. And in fact, we had a slide. We have data where it talked about where it may actually display those differences, because we did really define, with the CCC as the survey was released, as you know, Mike, one of the questions, we talk specifically about integrity of the data, right? So I think we were very purposeful of the word choice.
Absolutely.
So if we can use that and show that in a meaningful way, we'll definitely do that.
Cool. Thank you. Let's move on. Sorry, unless anyone has any other questions. It's not.
Quick. Just want to say a quick time check. We got about 13 minutes.
So I think, Phil, we can sort of hit on some of the highlights of the next few slides, but we're not going to be able to sort of run through the details of all the next few slides. And I think we should agree on next steps, that if the next step is going to be based on this conversation, Phil, you adjust the outline, or if you want the next step to be the CCC team to make comments on the outline and come back to us. So we should make sure that we're aiming towards the same thing.
So I think the only thing I've heard is general agreement that finding a way to bring out some opportunities is a good thing. I don't think we need to make any further detailed changes, or for us to go through another thing here. Mike, FJ, is that your understanding as well from
well, I was kind of thinking that it might be worth it might be, I mean, I don't want to put the white paper development on hold pending any other thing. So I think white paper development proceeds as you guys have outlined here. There's a couple things that we want to do. We need to make sure that the governing board is aligned, and I do think this is great stuff for the outreach committee to know. So I would love to have a second session of looking through the key findings and how that.
So I think to the question of whether work can continue with the outline as is. Do we want to add opportunities to that and allow things to continue, allow IDC to work on the outline with that, or do we want to go with it as is now?
Oh no, I think I think some kind of exploration of the opportunities is important. I do think it is an important finding, though, that most of the respondents were sort of focused on, security problems today rather than new usage models tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, why don't we flash through some of what we have? So this was the high level, and then we've got multiple slides to sort of break out what we're seeing as some more detail behind that, and including some suggested visuals and so forth, and getting into the detail there. So why don't we sort of hit on as much as we can of this?
Really great. Yeah, let's do it.
Great.
Yeah, so I just thought it'd be helpful as a conversation starter, and so that we really do lay out a good framework for the white paper in the outline. So this is a bit of what I would call a full outline, but I wanted to establish the tone and perspective to try and get the reader engaged as early as possible. So we start talking about some of these industry use cases. We introduce the concept of a T, because I don't think that we should approach where anybody who's picking this up already has a firm understanding of confidential computing. So we do spend a little bit of time sort of outlining the evolution of data security and privacy, right? So we could talk about both, but of data security, it sort of walks us through that definition of confidential computing. And here in the executive summary, we also talk about the size of the study, which I think gives a lot of weight and credence to the results: 15 industries, 500 to 10,000 employees. And then most importantly, all respondents are involved in specifying or developing technology systems. Meg, you want to go to the next slide? So here we sort of walk through those evolution steps. We talk about adherence to some of the frameworks like AI Bill of Materials and regulatory compliance. And we talk about the T as being a foundational component of confidential computing. We talk about sort of the stages and how they evolve to address emerging vulnerabilities in increasingly complex digital ecosystems. And again, this is something that you could read through. If there are any questions, obviously, after the call, I'd be happy to field those as well. Meg, next slide. So here we start to get into some of the sections. And so we start off with this sort of next frontier. We talk about the Confidential Computing Consortium, because I think it was agreed that at the beginning of this white paper process that in a white paper, you could have a complete section on the Confidential Computing Consortium, but I think that we wanted to present information about the consortium, so I thought we would do that early on, and then we could get into some of the survey findings, talking about the 74% that are familiar, talking about the regulatory frameworks, and of course, we'll bring in some of those statistics as well. Mike?
Yeah, I noticed on the page before, you're not capitalizing confidential computing. On this one, you are. Our preferred style is to capitalize both confidential and computing, which is what you're using on this slide and not on the other one. Minor point, but I just noticed it, so I thought I'd say.
We'll do that.
Excellent point. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Then we get into some of that market awareness. We start talking about these signals that we're seeing across the market for growing demand for confidential computing. So again, this is showing a very good story. The adoption status that I mentioned earlier: 18% in production, 57% piloting or testing. And once we get into huge. And once we get into some of the slides, typically our white papers have anywhere between 4 and 6 charts. So this is definitely going to be one of the charts I think that we want to show. And on each chart, right, it will show number of respondents that answered these questions, etc. All 600 answered this question. So I think things are looking really, really positive. We do talk about some of this adoption trend, which reflects a strategic shift towards securing data in use, as organizations are increasingly recognizing the importance of mitigating urgent threats and enabling secure collaboration in sensitive environments. Meg, next slide. So again, this is where we start to get into this data. And I think the overall sentiment here really does reflect a strong sense of urgency among organizations regarding confidential and regulated data. It's very proactive. I also think that a majority of these see themselves at high risk, as some of the earlier data supports. What's really interesting is that these respondents may feel as though there's greater exposure to threats like theft, tampering, or misuse. I think that there's a higher likelihood of regulatory scrutiny behind some of the thought process here. And again, things are moving in the right direction. We have a fairly high percentage, 19% planning to deploy in the next 24 months. So again, very positive. Meg, next slide. So here we have this deployment environment slide, which talks to how public cloud is obviously leading the data from the survey. Overwhelmingly, public cloud is in that higher 90th percentile. And we show that hybrid distributed cloud is around 45%, and private on-prem cloud is at 36%. I think that to the point that was made earlier, the on-prem and hybrid deployment might reflect those data sovereignty priorities, right? Which we could sort of talk about a little bit. And I think that overall edge adoption from the survey remained nascent. So public cloud is the clear leader at 71%.
I have to say that given that we are 71%, even the 36% is higher than I expected, I have to say. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, of course, we're going to talk about some additional IDC insights and how a lot of my research over the past 4 years, and I started looking at this about 3 years ago, where I started to see a certain repatriation of workloads to on-prem. I think at the time I was tracking 7 workloads, one of which was mainframe apps, and I've seen a steady uptick increase in those numbers. They're small, but they're consistently trending up. So that's something else that
do you think that confidential computing might slow that move or not, or do you think it's going to be consistent with it?
I think I think based on the data that we see in this survey, that I don't think it's going to slow it up, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Phil, have you got, I know we're almost at time. We did several tests. We tested a couple of different value props and usage models for on-prem. Did you have the detailed response on that, or is that readily accessible, or is that something that's?
We do have that. I don't know. I don't think it's in this deck, but of course it was in that prelim. But yeah, we can definitely talk to some of that, or send that to you.
Yeah, I'm just curious because this is, I mean, for a while we've been thinking, oh yeah, the on-prem market is this big untapped space, and if what the respondents are showing is like, we're not even interested in it on-prem, then we should probably expend our efforts elsewhere.
Yeah, and I see a lot of crossover between, right, because I cover both cloud security and confidential computing for IDC, so I see a lot of crossover in terms of sentiment. And, there's a significant talent gap out there. And, right, there's a higher level of sophistication as we get into technologies like confidential computing. And they're really looking to that public cloud provider. I think that we have a slide here that talks about it, but I think the relationship with the cloud provider ranks second as to being most important for these organizations adopting. Oh, I think you just passed it, Matt. Yep, right there.
This one?
Yep. Yeah, so we did talk about that a little bit, and citing existing relationships as cloud providers as the second main reason for CC cloud deployment, 82%, competitive advantage, time to market as the main reason.
Got it. Okay. Hey folks, it is 55 minutes past the hour. So I think what we got today is we've got a good look at the kind of the high level key takeaways. And I think we've said that there's a whole bunch of stuff we want to know more about, and I think there's a opportunity, or one of the strong requests is to include text and in the white paper about the opportunities presented by confidential computing, not just its defensive capabilities, but also its capabilities as a business enabler.
Oh, and Mike, even past that, I was thinking, cyber insurance rates are going to fall once you enable confidential computing. So I think that there's a tremendous number of benefits that we can pull out in the paper. Yeah.
Okay, very quick. Snap poll of our attendees. Do we want to invite our IDC colleagues
come back? Yes, I want more details, please. This is great. I want to pour over these details. I want a day's worth of. No, that's too much. No, I'm loving it. Please come back.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yes,
if that's okay with you guys, this is such great data and such great analysis. Thank you.
All right, and I'll probably try and get you in with the governing board as soon as possible, just so we don't have any governing board surprises while you're working on the white paper.
That would be good, yeah.
And all right, any other CCC outreach committee business